everyone. In this session I'm going to discuss about InstaController app. So you might be knowing about the controller features and the app that it fulfills all the features that are available within the controller. So currently this app is running on Android operating system. This can also be ported onto iOS, BlackBerry and Windows mobile operating systems. So now let's log into the system. So as soon as you click on the login button, so it will log into the controller. So this is how the home page looks like, and based on the device that we are logged into. So when I say the device, we have three versions of controllers, right? So we covered all these three versions in another video. So this one is actually logged onto RSI controller, and these are all the features enabled in this version. So like switches. So switches are corresponding to the relay switches, and analog devices are correspond to the analog ports that we have on the controller. Digital devices are correspond to the serial communication as well as IR communication. And presentation mode, VC modes are actually to make all the devices work with a single button. So I will explain one by one. When I come to that, I will give you more information how to configure and work with them. So let's go to the switches now. So these 10 switches are actually correspond to the 10 relay switches that we have on the controller. You can connect multiple electrical devices, electrical or electronic devices. So that are, for example, an alarm or a projector, a door lock, or a normal fan or LED, a TV, any electrical device. Up to 6 amps you can connect here. Action is actually to communicate analog devices. So analog devices are actually, for example, LED lights that are connected via analog balas and sirens. So these are few examples. When you come to the interface, it has actually 0 to 100% varying signal, and if it goes to the 0, that means the signal will be completely 0. And when you come to the 100%, so it gives a 100% signal. So this actually is useful for communicating analog devices that can accept 0 to 10 volts of DC voltage. So actually the device varies its behavior based on the signal that will get generated from 0 to 10 volts based to correspond to the 0 to 100% of user interface. Let's go back to next one. Let's go to the digital devices. So digital devices screen looks like this. You can connect multiple devices that can be communicated using a serial communication and IR communication. Serial communication is two-way communication, that especially RS-232 we are using here, and IR communication is actually a one-way communication. So, and the system supports multiple protocols. We will come to the settings part and I will explain you more detailedly. So digital devices, or for example, you can consider a camera or HDMI switcher or a monitor or a AC. Top 3 buttons are actually corresponding to the dedicated serial communication. You cannot make any changes to those 3 buttons. Bottom 4 buttons are actually hybrid buttons, and you can configure either for a serial communication or IR communication. So that means if you configure these buttons for corresponding to the serial communication, then you can communicate serial devices. If you configure for IR communication, you can communicate only IR devices. So that's all about digital devices. Let's go back to home page. Presentation mode is actually useful when you want to control devices that participate in the presentation. For example, your lights, camera, projector screen. So with single button you can control all these devices. VC mode is actually to operate multiple devices with single button that are useful in the video conference mode. For example, HDMI switcher or your monitor or camera, with a single button you can control all of them. Let's go to digital devices section. In this section we have many features like port configuration, serial protocol configuration, IR protocol configuration. Let's come to the port configuration. In this configuration we have 7 ports. First 3 are actually for dedicated serial communication and the remaining 4 are for serial as well as IR communication. So that's why we call them as hybrid ports. So in the first port, on the first port there are nothing configured. So we can configure any digital device that is actually available. On first port we can configure any device. For example, camera. So we can say camera name, and that name can be customized, and we can select a device, for example camera, and the maker. You can have multiple makers, for example PeopleLink, and you can also select the model from the drop down and go serial protocol. For example, we have Vista. So here, if the device supports multiple protocols, you can see all of them in the list. Because port 1, 2, 3 do not support IR communication, that is got disabled. Let's go to the port 2. On this port we already configured HDMI switcher, which is actually made by PeopleLink, and the model is HMS425HD. So similarly you can configure any other device from the drop down, like a DSP, monitor, projector, whatever device you want you can configure here. So similarly port 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. In case of IR communication, let's go to port 4. So this actually supports both serial and IR protocol. So monitor we selected here, and the device is also monitor, and maker is actually made by LG, and you have multiple models in this maker. Yeah. So serial protocol supported by is actually proprietary, and that is a LG. So IR protocol is actually Sony, Panasonic, Samsung. There are many actually that we support. We can actually change the maker by clicking on this icon. So as soon as you click on that, you will get the maker name. So you can change here the name, whether it is an LG or a Samsung or Ekiga, any other device that is actually added to the system. Yeah. And we can change the model also. When you click on the icon, you will get the model name, and you can give the model whatever you want here. So we can actually change the name of the maker. We can edit and add the maker also here, and we can also add and edit model also. So for example, if you find any new model, we can actually add here or edit. Let's go back. And in the serial protocols also we can edit. For example, these are all of the Vista protocols that the camera will be communicated using, and these protocols you can change and you can save. Let's go back. So similarly IR protocol. So we can add a new protocol, and this part is actually for editing the protocol. Awesome. Let's come to the serial protocol section. In this section actually we have multiple modules. Currently we are supporting camera, monitor, HDMI switcher, projector and DSP modules. So when you go to the camera, you can actually add by clicking on that the empty screen you can see. So this screen is actually different from the previous screen that we came into the edit mode. Here actually you can add different protocols. For example, in case of camera, along with the Visca protocols, you have Pelcopy, Pelcoli and many other protocols and proprietary protocols. So those all you can add here and you can save, and after saving you can go back and you can select this particular protocol using this name when you select the device for a particular port. Let's go back. Let's go to monitor module. So in this module you can give a name and different commands. Like we have different sections in giving commands also. Inquiry section is actually corresponding to the inquiring device status. For example, what is the power status, whether the device is turned on or turned off, and whether it is muted and unmuted. So kind of information we can get from the device. And in the controlling section, so actually for different controlling commands like volume up, down, moving up, down, and power on, power off. So this type of commands you can configure here and you can save, and you can select this particular device from the serial port configuration section. Let's go back. So this module is actually for configuring HDMI switcher serial protocol. You can give a protocol name. Recommended format is maker_model. And in case of settings, so input quantity 4 is actually a mandatory one, and output quantity you will have a option to select 1, 2 or 4. If it is 1, it will behave like a non-matrix one, 4x1 matrix switcher. If it is 2 or 4, it will behave like a 4x2 matrix switcher and 4x4 matrix switcher. So you can give a customizer name for the display one and the corresponding inquiry commands and controlling commands. Similarly, you can give a customizer name for the display 2 and then inquiry commands and control commands. Please note that these two are different sections actually in terms of outputs. So let's go to the projector module. So here, as usual, you can give the protocol name by following the name convention. And here in settings, you have a provision to give wait time in milliseconds. This is actually to wait the system. I mean, the projector is to get ready when you turned it on. And after that, inquiry commands followed by the controlling commands. So let's go to the DSP module. Here, as usual, you can give the protocol name, and in settings section you have multiple input channels. By default you have 8 input channels, 8 output channels and 8 zones. So that means 8 input channels you can create, 8 output channels you can create, 8 zones you can create, and you can select up to 16 in each category. So these are actually for getting this is actually inquiry section, and you can get the device inquiry. This is actually inquiry section, and this is inquiry command followed by the acknowledgements. You can give multiple acknowledgements. And so there are 3 more sections actually. Input channel section. In this section, up to 8 channel commands you can give, like mute inquiry and mute and unmute, volume up, down. So because you selected 8 input channels, you are able to see 8 channels related commands and 1 common acknowledgement. So this acknowledgement is common for all the 8 channels. Here you can give acknowledgement commands like inquiry, mute and unmute. Similarly for mute, unmute, and volume up and down. If you select input channel 1, then you will have only 1 channel and the corresponding acknowledgement command. Let's go to the output channels. And remember, in output channels you can give speakers and line outs. And similarly, in input channels you can consider a mic or a line in. And here, for the corresponding 8 output channels, you have 8 channels commands and the acknowledgement. Similarly, you have zones. Here also you have 8 zone commands and the corresponding acknowledgement. Let's go back. Let's go to IR section. So, in case of IR protocol, remember that it is a one-way communication, and the modules that we supported are camera, monitor, projector and HDMI switcher as of now. And please remember, the codes required for these communications are provided by the manufacturer. So we need to get the codes for these devices from the manufacturer itself. Let's go to the monitor. So here, as usual, you can give the name, protocol name, for example, Visca, Elcopy, Pelcody. Similarly, if you have any proprietary name, you can give that, and the corresponding codes we need to give here. Please remember, these all are hexadecimal codes. Let's go back to the next module, monitor. As usual, protocol name and hexa codes for controlling, like power on, input, settings, exit, mute, volume up, down, OK, move up, move down, move right and left. So these are the commands that we support here in this module. Let's go to the projector. Here also the commands that we supported required all the hexadecimal codes and the protocol name. So protocol name, please remember that the format that we recommended is maker, model and IR type. Let's go to HDMI section. So this is HDMI switcher, IR protocol configuration. As usual, you can give the protocol name, and this is a little bit different from the previous modules. Input quantity selecting 4 is actually a default one, and we cannot change anything. So because it is for this module is meant for 4x1, 4x2 and 4x4 switchers, and you can select the output quantity. If it is 1, it corresponds to 4x1 switcher. If it is 2 or 4, it corresponding to the 4x2 and 4x2 respectively matrix switches. So in case of 4x1, you need to give the control commands for the corresponding 4 input sources. Because we have 4 inputs here, you need to give 4 input sources and the mute one. Similarly, when you select output 2, that means for a HDMI 4x2 matrix switcher, you need to give for both the outputs. Similarly, when you select 4, you need to give for the 4 output the corresponding commands. Let's go to the section settings part. Here we have many settings for controlling the device. These are few of these settings are actually belongs to the app settings, and few of them are actually to the related to the controller. Let's go to the first one, serial and IR ports configuration. So in this section we can actually configure all the 7 ports related settings. First 3 are actually for the dedicated serial ports. So you can select whatever the baud rate you want. So you can select whatever the baud rate you want from 300 to 115 to 00. So the manufacturer will provide the information regarding the device, what baud rate the device supports. So correspondingly we need to select the device baud rate here. And remember, the baud rates are different from device to device and from port to port. So let's go to the next 4 ports. So the remaining 4 ports are actually hybrid ports. So that's why you can configure either the 4 as a serial ports or IR ports. When you configure it as a serial port, so you need to select the baud rate again. When you configure it as IR, you have a choice to choose the emitter type. So here we support many proprietary and standard emitter types. So the corresponding one you need to select and communicate with the device. Let's go to the similarly you have port 5, 6 and 7. Let's go to the next section, IP settings. Here this is an important feature related to the controller. If you configure local IP settings, you can control a controller which is sitting on the LAN. If you configure a public IP settings, if you configure with public IP settings, you can control like if you configure public IP settings, you can control the controller from anywhere in the world. Let's go to the next section, credentials. By default, the available admin Let's go to the next section, credentials. Here you can choose your own username and password, and that username and password you need to give while logging on to the controller. Next one, switches. So here we have 10 relay switches, and you can name them whatever the device that you are controlling. And similarly, you can switch between the toggle and push variations. If it is a toggle, you can press once for turning on, and it will be in the turn on state till you press it again. In case of push, you need to press and hold till the time you want to turn it on. Let's go to the analog devices section. So here you can name all the 3 channels to whatever the name you want. For example, zone 1, zone 2, zone 3, or a light 1, light 2, light 3, or a room 1, 2, 3, or a floor 1, floor 2, floor 3. So whatever the zones you are comfortable with, you can give those names. Next, app settings. Here actually you need to give the controller IP address. This feature is useful to control multiple controllers. For example, you bought a multiple controllers, but you have one tab. So you can log on to any controller by giving its IP address here. So that means one tab and sitting from one place you can control multiple controllers. And remember username and password option is actually to remember the username and password, to avoid every time to give the username and password while logging on to the controller. If you deselect this option, you need to give every time when you are logging on to the controller. Managing presentation and VC modes. Here you have multiple options to choose. Let's go to presentation mode. So actually, as I explained you previously, presentation mode is to controlling multiple devices with single button while moving to the presentation. So just remember, multiple instructions you need to give here. The instructions can be device specific instructions, and you can control multiple devices, and not only, one need not be always one command per one device. It can be multiple commands can be given to the single device. Let's go to the first one. So for example, if you take these 5 rows are corresponding to the 5 instructions. It can be related to one device or multiple devices. Let us see how it's going to be. For example, here by default the serial is selected. In case of serial, you need to select which port the device is connected to and the corresponding wait time. For example, if you want to wait after giving a previous instruction, you can give the time that needs to be waited, and it is in milliseconds. When this is actually required when a particular device takes time when you give some instruction. For example, a projector, when you give a turn on instruction, it takes some time, and we need to give that duration here to wait till you give the next command. And the corresponding serial command you need to give here. And when you select a relay, you need to select the one of the 10 ports and give the wait time. For relay, the wait time will be normally 0, and you need to give the commands. 1 is to turn on and 0 is to turn off. And when you select analog device, the port can be any one of the 3 analog ports, and wait time is also normally 0, and the corresponding command is actually the range between 0 to 100%. And IR. So when you select IR, again you need to select one of the 4 hybrid ports where the device is connected, and the IR signal will come from that particular port. And wait time, and again here you need to give the hexadecimal code that will send the emitter command. And this hexadecimal code is actually corresponding to the protocol that you selected for communicating IR device. So first row is actually corresponding to one instruction, and you can add as many instructions as you want by clicking on add new row. And similarly you can delete for a particular instruction if you don't want that. And now this is actually moving into the presentation mode. When you are moving back out, coming out of the presentation mode, so you need to give presentation shutdown commands. So that means this section is actually corresponding to the presentation shutdown. So when you are closing the presentation, you need to give shutdown commands. So these are corresponding to the, again, same as whatever we covered in the previous presentation mode. Each row is actually corresponding to one instruction, and you can select as usual either it is a relay or analog or a serial or an IR instruction. Similarly, we have VC mode section. Here you need to give instructions to multiple devices when you are moving to the VC mode. Similarly, when you are shutting down the VC mode, you need to give the shutdown commands. So this is all about managing presentation in VC mode. And finally, you can see here the temperature of the controller and humidity of the controller, and finally log out from the system.